So, I'm back, and it's awesome, and it's always an interesting thing to get here because now I have no screen dumps from GA4, I have no code snippets. I'm kind of, oh my God, it's so awkward. You're sitting there ready to take pictures of my stuff, and it's like big boring pictures, but let's get rocking. So, what's wrong with this picture? What?
From 10 years ago.
Yeah, maybe, but it's also, it's perfect seen from our perspective, right? There's a lot of things, this is what we've been dreaming about, this is making our lives easier, and it's really good, but the challenge is that, is this basically us making faster horses? Right? Because for years we had this, well, when people are talking about AI, it's the biggest thing since the printing press, it's the biggest thing since hot water, it's the biggest thing since the wheel. And what do we use it for? Hey, let's do our stuff faster. Right? Is that the point? Is that really the value we derive from AI? We're so busy looking at it. And I think this came out of a conversation I had, and I think the main problem is this, right? Because we feel we can push AI the direction we want, the tools we're using now, doing more automation, doing more stuff. But what's the main assumption that we have when we do this? We're assuming that the users will not change with AI, right? And I think that is the big problem. And that's kind of what I will be touching on today, saying what is the dilemma that we're stuck in, what is the problem it gives us as analytics in general, because it's not as easy as we think. Because there's a lot of consequences that goes beyond a better and more automated interface in relation to what we're looking at today. So who the hell am I? Well, I'm just Steen. Steen has been here for 10 years. He's a nerd. He likes to talk about analytics. But he also has this commercial angle talking about where the hell is the money in all this? Why do we invest in these awesome analytics setups? Why do we push data and talk about tracking? What's the return on data? Right? Because a lot of the session so far has been, this is the magic wand that will give you better data. And hooray for that, because that's important, because that's data quality, and that's the foundation. But when you have it, what are you going to do with it? And then now we have the answer that has been rolling out over the last 12 months, especially. We're going to put it into AI, and AI is going to do shit with it. Right? But that's not necessarily good enough. And it's not all Tom's fault, but this presentation is in part all Tom's fault. Because in reality, he invited me to speak at the Conversion Hotel in 2022. Right? What? And what he told, what I said, I wanted to do the first presentation. He said, yes, sure, do something visionary. Do something what is going to impact experimentation over the next couple of years or in the long run. What is the changes that we're facing? So of course I said, cool, I'll talk about almonds. And it's like, because almonds is really a good example of some place where things are changing and we have to adapt in a new way. And for the Californians in the room, this is probably not going to be radically new, but for probably, 49 weeks a year, California is close to being an insect desert. Right? There's not a lot of plants, there's not a lot of shit going on. And then suddenly within a 3-week period, you have 15 trillion almond flowers that blossoms and need to be pollinated. That's not really an optimized ecosystem, right? And that's kind of some of the things that the same challenges that we're facing, there's stuff going on where the ecosystem has failed because it's changing and we need to adapt to a new ecosystem. And I'll get back to the story of how you tackle something like this. Because it is being tackled. California is the biggest producer of almonds in the world. So let's talk about something else. How people buy. This could be any model in relation to the purchase process. This is what we're building analytics around, right? When we talk about analytics, in a lot of cases, it's about why do we have data? We have data so we can support the customer's purchase process. So we can give insights, so we can optimize the business, so we can sell more. So it might be a purchase, depending on if you're a public organization, then you want them to purchase information. Can be different types of purchases, but the process is pretty linear, right? So they recognize they have a need, then they go do some information search, they do or evaluate some alternatives, and that's all good. Then they decide they want to purchase something, they purchase it, and then they evaluate it. And so far, we've been in a situation where all these points have been fairly well covered in analytics, right? We've been able to measure how big is how many people are searching for our brands in the top, how many people are now looking at my information. We've been able to build this funnel, right? This is funnel thinking. It's just put on the side instead. So this is our core of our thinking in relation to what we're doing. And it has been working really well because life has been linear to a large extent. So in comes AI, and this is a horrible old case. This is actually, we did this case in 2015. It's for us, the magical case of why AI is amazing. We went in for Bonnier and made a project where they implemented AI in their online processes using analytics data. Took 6 months to implement it, and 6 months later, they had the entire project recuperated 3.5 times. So all costs were paid, and they had money in the bank to show off for everybody. It's an open case. You can find it on Google Cloud site. So nothing magic here, but in the sense that now AI is catching up. This is something that is standard now that everybody can do, and most likely at probably a 10th or 5th of the cost that they paid in 2017 when we did it. So this is accessible to everybody. But the problem when something is accessible to everybody, then it's no longer a competitive advantage. So there is a first mover value in doing it now because not everybody's doing it, so there is a gap between what can be done and what is being done. But it's not really a gap that will secure your business for a radically long time. Does that make sense? It's not to depress anybody, but it's like we need to do this shit to catch up or to stay on the wave, not to get left behind by the herd. So having this thing with AI saying it's fine, it's cool, we talk about it, and it's fine, it's super, we find the resources in it, but AI is not the new frontier, it's actually been here for a while. And it's easier than ever, right? There's now, and this is probably a 1-year-old slide now, so there's probably 1,000 products here that can offer these services. So it's massively escalating even more. So it's getting easier and easier to implement all these tools that can make all our lives easier. And that would be fine, except for these guys, right? Because there's a problem with people. So the problem with people is that even if we can sell more faster and more personalized, they only have a limited amount of money. So all the businesses that we're in, people have a fixed budget. It's not like we can if we just all go AI on everything, then we'll all get rich. It's still a zero-sum game in relation to what is the wealth in the market, right? But it's also that they get impacted by things as well. And that is the radical changes that we're facing now. And some of them are not so radical, but some of them are happening right under our noses. So the example of California, how did they solve the problem with pollinating 15 trillion flowers? Exactly. So in the US, there's a profession now that is a traveling beekeeper. You have a truckload full of beehives that you drive around the US. So you drive up to California and you release billions of bees that are there for 3 weeks, and then you load them, and then you drive to Kansas to pollinate the blueberry fields. And that's a job. Traveling beekeeper. I had no idea. I just find it fascinating saying that if you have a problem, you have to come up with a solution. So the presentation I did for Ton was really about talking about this as saying for us, and we'll get back to that, solution to data loss might not be trying to do more tricks and stuff, but actually considering using AI for artificial uses. So it's not something that, well, we can do as analytics right now, but it's actually something that is available in the market. Oh, we'll get back to that. The challenge with people is that AI is already impacting their lives to some extent. It's getting more and more normal. This is a study from last year where they asked Americans in regarding to 6 things if they knew if there were AI in this product or not. And only 30% says that there was AI in all of them, and 30% says there were AI in 2 or less. Right? But it's actually all AI-enhanced products or activities. So AI is actually out there in a lot of ways, and it's starting to impact people's life, whether we want to or not, right? Google Maps. Anybody, any takers making a route on Google Maps, that's pretty AI. So it's already here. But that's not where it ends, right? This is just the beginning. So the next step, I saw some cases that scared the shit out of me as a consultant. Clients starting to using AI in procurement. So actually removing the people that you're negotiating with in procurement, and they start evaluating you on performance and data and all different type of stuff. That gives them a much more efficient process, but it also removes a lot of the humanity in the process. Try negotiating prices with an AI, right? It's really not that simple. So that is something where AI is changing our world from the outside, where we might not be aware that this is going on. But this is procurement thinking, hey, we can use AI too. And I think the challenge is that around us, there's a lot of industries that are actually pushing AI the same way as we are. So AI is here. And I think, and this is not even AI related, this is just people's changing purchase processes. I think part of the story is also that we have been so busy with the data that when was the last time you actually talked to your customers? Say, hey, I'm in analytics, I don't need to talk to my stinking customers. Right? So, but there is a problem, because this is one of the golden things that people have been talking about. The green line is the number of searches for pizza on Google, right? In Google Trends. So this is just steadily going down. And if you look, the index pizza sale is going up. So what's happening here? It's not magic, and 10 people will probably say it, but so. Yeah, they go to an app instead. They go to Volt or Hunger or Deliveroo or whatever, right? So pizza sale have moved. But are we aware, do we follow our customers on this? Or are we still busy focusing on our Google ads? Are we actually considering the changes in their purchase behavior? Because this is probably one of the most important things if we want to stay ahead. Following the customers and not necessarily just focusing on the data. Do you hear voices? It could be a psychology conference, it's not. You should hear voices, because voice search, right? When I look at my kids, they walk around with their phone, they never enter anything. They speak to the phone and the phone replies. How does that impact the purchase process that we see for our visitors and our customers? Because if we don't have the data in there and we don't try to explore and say, how can we find it? Then it's actually a blind angle. And not that it was massive, but I know last year alone there was 12 billion voice searches done on Google, no, done in general, right? And that's not a lot, that's 1 day of searches in Google, but it's still doubled compared to the year before. And that's just the voice searches that get registered. So all the other places where people do searches or have conversations with their interfaces, what is our role in that conversation, right? We're kind of slipping because we're focusing so much on the website and on the tracking and getting the data layer correct, and what about GA4? But at the end, we're not about the tool. We're actually about supporting the business commercially. And then we have this really fucking up all our understanding of purchase processes. People doing GTP research, right? So if we're looking at the original flow in relation to decisions, people will go into Gen AI interface and ask questions and get a conversation and specify what they need and actually do a lot of the initial research there. And then they will go and they will buy from us or buy from somebody else. But challenge is that we're losing the contact, right? And then, of course, something like this might be early days, but this is, and not the most successful, humane AI. They had like a pin you could put on your code, and then you would talk to it, and that would be your entire conversation. And you would order stuff and plane tickets, and it would be part of your life. Plenty of errors in it, but there's 2 of them now, right? There's also rapid. So sooner or later, somebody will do something that is successful here, creating another interface that we're not tracking. Right? So having this challenge and being aware of what are the touch points for our customers. And on top of that comes us, because we go to the marketeers and say, hey dude, I have an idea. I have a platform where we can send out hyper-personalized newsletters to our customers every single day. So, and everybody does that. So, as an end user, a customer in the market, you're suddenly faced, they're standing with the toes in the water and there's a tidal wave of content coming towards them that is hyper-personalized and really just directed at them. So what will they do? They will find new customer journeys. They will use AI as a shield to protect them from our personalized content. So what we are actually doing, So what we're actually doing with our content is that we're supercharging the change, right? Because we're forcing the user to protect themselves from all the marketeer. Was it Gary Vaynerchuk said, marketeers will fuck up everything? And we're helping them. So, new customer journeys. So is it all bad news? No, it's not. It's saying, okay, cool, this is the data we used to have, this is the data we have now. Not really a perfect analytics data set here, right? Because we're getting looped out completely of the decision process. We don't know anything that's going on if we just keep focusing like we've been focusing so far. So we need to kind of flip the mindset and open our minds to focus on the touch point instead, right? And in this scenario, in this scenario, what does this mean? It doesn't mean jack, right? Because if we have no data, it doesn't matter if it's first person or third person. It's really not where the problem is, but we're kind of being distracted by this problem and moving away from the actual problem, which is the change of the users. Does that make sense? So I see this as a big thing, because this might be important, but what party data is it if we're tracking somebody's AI? Right? So if we can tap into somebody's AI and how it makes decision, 0 party, first party, -0, right? It's something completely different because it taps into something, some other place in the decision process. But I think that's a really challenging concept to wrap our heads around because we've been so focused on the other stuff. Challenge is that the AI is going to function as a gatekeeper, right? So it will be like in the good old days when the CEO had a secretary that would stop everybody from calling and kind of decide who got through. That is the potential of AI for all of us and everybody out there. And it really puts a conflict in relations to having a sales process and the intention of pushing products and marketing messages. And I think the challenge is it's really tied to something specific, and it's tied to trust. Who will get through is tied to the trust we have for that specific entity, right? So I'm betting that the tax man will always get through to you. Not that you trust him, but because the AI will step aside and say, I'm not messing with this guy. But otherwise, there's kind of three types of entities out there. There's the entities we trust where we actually want them to have our data. That our AI will be open in relation to that. I want to know when there's new Nike shoes coming or something. So I will open up my line of communication to that. There will be the gray zone in the middle where I might give a little data, but I won't give them the full Monty. They'll just have an idea. And then there will be the majority of entities out there won't get anything. I will absolutely block them because I don't know them, I don't trust them, I don't need them in my life because that's kind of already been settled. Right? So having this conflict in relation to saying, how do we position ourselves so we get into group number one? And the main thing is actually a good old classic, it's brand. Right? Because we need to establish ourselves as a trusted sender to get the message out there so they will open our mails. If they have 50 mails, they will say, oh, IIH, I'm going to check that out first. Right? So you get this, that the brand suddenly gets a massive revival because it's the people we trust we will open first. And it's the people, the brands we trust that will get through. And it's also in a voice search. So if I go in and I ask, what are the best new sneakers? I get a wide variety of content that has been found and tests that have been done. But if I go out and ask, what are the best new Nike sneakers? Then the brand limits the search and I'm actually impacting the outcome in that place. So brand being part of the search suddenly becomes massively more important and it becomes much more difficult for new brands to enter this unless we have some very experimental persons, right? Cool. So before the end, you don't have to, right? It's like I think for us, sure, this is kind of changing the perspective. This is not now, we know this. If anything, the businesses we work for, the clients we have, they're not first movers, they're not going to jump on this wagon right away. We just need to be aware that we need to look ahead to insert and make sure that we have a data because data quality has never been worse than it is now, right? We do a lot of things, but we're losing data, and so having this refocus on data quality, or instead of focusing on the data quality, then focusing on the users. So my main message here is that don't be that guy, right? Like, you could do a lot of stuff, but you're putting a horse in front of the car, a faster horses image, saying, yeah, we're just using the tools, it's really awesome, but not really what it could be. So this is actually the next step of the bees. They are building AI bees because a traveling beekeeper is way too expensive. So if I can build cheap technology bees that can actually pollinate this field, then I'll save a lot of money. I can have my own bees. And I can gear them to work like they're supposed to. So I don't have any issues. So suddenly the traveling beekeeper gets the person who's under pressure. And I think this about owning your own bees is something that was one of my points in the talk with Ton, saying the vision of owning users and flipping the process in relation to what we're used to. So we've been so used to tracking the data and analyzing it and then coming up with recommendations. But by having our own segments, owning our own artificial users that matches our users, the process will be the reverse. We will implement a change, or we will come up with a change. We will ask our artificial users, and they will tell us whether to do it or not, and then we'll validate on the few data points we have. Because then suddenly, we're not tracking anybody, we're just using the final data to validate that our artificial users are still relevant. So this is just saying, is this science fiction? I presented it as science fiction in 2022. Last year, I can name you at least 5 companies that offer services similar to this, where you can actually go in, you can present marketing creatives, and you will get feedback from AIs that has the personality of the users that you're trying to connect with. So the step from there to actual artificial users, that lemmings that you can throw into the changes on their website to see how they behave, it's a lot closer than we think. So suddenly we're not competing on the data we can gather, but our interactions and our way of using our AIs. So it's pushing the boundaries in a new way. There has to be a basis, right? But in this case, it's really the question he got saying, in 10 years, what will have changed? Because this is kind of the moment of hope. And this is kind of the important part as well, saying, so he said, well, I get that question a lot. And I don't really think that it's that interesting. I think it's much more interesting saying, in 10 years, what will not have changed? Right? In 10 years, will people still want fast delivery? Yes. Will they still want cheap prices? Yes. So kind of saying, what is it that people will continue to want? What is it that how can we support that with what we are doing? Because that makes us impressively more valuable to the organization by understanding the users and what they want and how to tap into it. So that was almost that. Main point, follow the users, not the data. We are here to enable sales. We're not here to track data. Comes as a shock to a lot of people. Think touch points on websites. The website is going to be more and more a source of something that will feed an AI information, but it will not necessarily be something where people are coming, right? And think data partnerships, because in a lot of cases we are blind on what happens on Deliveroo. But could we make a partnership with them and do a clean room to share some data in some way and actually enhance our understanding of the context of what we're doing? Because that is where the interesting data often lies. And then, of course, talk to your fucking customers, right? I know it's scary and they're real people, but they know why they buy you the stuff you have, right? They know why they interact on your website and why they do what you do. So with that was it, guys. Cool.